Ever imagine an AI just whipping up a Van Gogh,
Right.
but learning his whole style from, like, just a couple paintings?
Wow.
That's the crazy world of imitation thresholds we're diving into today.
Yeah.
You sent us this 2024 research paper from the University of Washington, and it's seriously got me side-eyeing my Instagram feed.
Oh, yeah. It really makes you think about what we put out there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This study tackles how many images an AI needs to convincingly copy a style or even someone's face.
Okay.
They call this the imitation threshold.
Okay, so before we go full Black Mirror,
Yeah.
break it down for me. They use those stable diffusion models, right?
Right.
The ones trained on those giant image sets like LAIM, which is basically the internet's photo album.
That's right. And they focus on two main things, human faces
Yeah.
and artistic styles.
Okay.
What they found is both fascinating and a little bit unsettling.
All right, spill the tea.
All right.
If an AI learns to paint like Picasso after seeing a few of his works, does that mean copyright law is out the window?
Right.
What about generating faces of people without their consent?
Yeah, those are the million-dollar questions.
Yeah.
This research dives headfirst into those ethical concerns and how the line between inspiration and straight-up copying gets blurry with AI.
So how they measure this imitation threshold?
Okay.
Training a whole new AI is crazy expensive, so they must have had a workaround.
They did. Instead of building new AIs, they used a method called Memetic 2, which estimates the threshold.
Okay.
Using existing models, think of it like a shortcut to see how much an AI needs to learn before it becomes a master mimic.
Clever.
Yeah.
But imitation feels kind of subjective. How do you measure that?
Right.
Did they just ask the AI, hey, how good is your forgery?
Well, not quite. For faces, they used a face embedding model,
Okay.
basically facial recognition software for AI.
Gotcha.
It compares the generated faces to real faces in the training data.
That's how well the AI can reproduce a specific person.
Exactly.
Right. What about art styles?
Yeah.
How do you quantify that je ne sais quoi?
For art styles, they used an art style embedding model.
Okay.
Think of it like a fingerprint for a particular style. It's not just about brushstrokes, but the overall composition colors,
Right.
even the feeling the art evokes.
Whoa. So the AI is getting deep into the art critique game.
Right.
They even checked the AI's judgment against real people.
They did.
So did they find a magic number where the AI goes full-on art forger?
It's not quite a magic number, but they found the threshold varies depending on what the AI is trying to mimic.
Okay.
For faces, it's between 200 and 600 images.
Okay.
That's how many pictures an AI needs to see before it can generate a realistic likeness of you.
Hang on. If just 200 images are enough, isn't everyone at risk?
Yeah.
My Instagram alone has more than that.
It's definitely food for thought, especially as these data sets grow and AI models get even more sophisticated.
Right.
What's even more concerning is that the threshold for art styles was even lower, somewhere between 200 and 300 images.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, think how many images of a famous artist's work are floating around online. So is the internet basically an all-you-can-eat buffet for these AI copycats?
It's starting to look that way. One of the big takeaways from the study is that the more an AI sees something, the better it gets at copying it, just like us, really. The more we practice something, the better we get.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's also kind of terrifying when you think about it.
Right.
Is there anything else that affects how well an AI can copy besides just seeing a ton of images?
That's a great question, and it's something the researchers looked into.
Yeah.
They found that image quality plays a role.
Right.
And even the specific training process of the model can make a difference. So it's not just about quantity. There are other factors at play.
So what does this all mean? What are the real-world implications of this research?
Yeah.
Is it time to scrub my digital footprint?
This research is a wake-up call for both AI developers and users. Developers need to think about the ethics of using potentially copyrighted material in their training datasets. Imagine being an artist and finding out your work is being used to train an AI that can churn out imitations.
That's like someone learning to forge your signature by studying a stack of signed documents.
Exactly.
Not cool.
And for users, it raises huge questions about privacy and misuse.
Right.
What's stopping someone from using an AI trained on your social media photos to create unauthorized images of you?
Whoa, or even worse, imagine the potential for making even more convincing deepfakes.
Right.
This is getting into some seriously scary territory.
It definitely opens a Pandora's box of issues that we need to address.
Right.
The researchers themselves acknowledge there's more to explore. They focused on pre-trained models.
Yeah.
But what happens when a model is fine-tuned on specific concepts or people?
Could the imitation threshold drop even lower?
It could.
That's a chilling thought.
It is. And it's one of the many questions we need to grapple with as AI becomes more powerful and pervasive.
We're already seeing lawsuits pop up around the use of copyrighted stuff in training data sets. This is just the beginning of a huge conversation about the future of AI art, isn't it?
It is.
This mimetic 2 thing. Could it be used for other things besides just art and faces?
That's a great question, and one the researchers addressed directly.
Okay.
While they focused on those 2 areas, the principles of mimetic 2 could be applied to investigate imitation thresholds in other domains, like music or literature.
Hold on. Could an AI trained on Beethoven start composing original pieces that are indistinguishable from his?
It's possible.
Or could an AI write a novel in the style of Stephen King? We're wading into Black Mirror territory here.
The potential applications and potential risks are mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And that's why research like this is so important. It's forcing us to confront these issues before they become full-blown crises.
All right, so before we go full dystopian sci-fi,
Yeah.
let's rewind a bit. We talked about how the more an AI sees something, the better it gets at copying it.
Yeah.
But the paper also mentioned other things that affect imitation, like the quality of the images and the way the AI is trained.
Right.
Can you break that down a bit more? What's so special about image quality in this context?
Think of it like this. If you're trying to learn to paint like Van Gogh, wouldn't you rather study crisp, high-res images that capture all those tiny details?
Right.
It's the same for an AI.
Oh, okay.
The quality of the data directly impacts what it produces.
So garbage in, garbage out.
Pretty much.
Even for fancy AI.
And then there's the training process itself, which is a whole other can of worms.
Right.
There are so many variables.
Right.
The specific algorithms, how the data is fed to the model, how long it's trained for all of these, can affect how well the AI learns to imitate.
It all sounds insanely complex.
It is. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
And even small tweaks can have a big impact.
Okay, this is where I need some hand-holding. The paper talked about how they measured the imitation threshold using things like change detection algorithms.
Oh, okay.
I'm already lost. So what does that even mean?
Imagine you're looking at a graph of the AI's imitation score over time.
Okay.
At first, the score is low, but then it suddenly jumps up. A change detection algorithm helps pinpoint that moment, the tipping point, where the AI becomes a good mimic.
So it's like finding the moment the AI says,
Yeah.
hold my digital paintbrush, I'm about to get creative.
Exactly.
But how do you apply that to something as subjective as art or faces?
Right.
It's not like there's a right or wrong answer.
That's where those human perception studies come in. Remember, the researchers wanted to make sure the AI's judgments lined up with how real people see things.
Right.
They showed people generated images and asked them to rate the similarity to the originals.
So they were double-checking the AI's work
Yes.
to make sure it wasn't hallucinating.
Exactly. It's all about making sure the measurements are as accurate as possible.
Gotcha. They also use these fancy things called domain-specific image embedders. What in the world are those?
Think of them as specialized tools for analyzing images.
Okay.
For faces, they used a model designed to recognize subtle facial features.
Okay.
For art, they used a model trained to understand different artistic techniques.
So not just any old image analysis tool. These are like
Right.
the AI art world's equivalent of a magnifying glass and a fingerprint kit.
That's a great way to put it. Using these tools allowed them to get much more accurate and meaningful results.
It's amazing how they combined so many different things. AI art, history, psychology, even statistics.
It's a true interdisciplinary mashup, and that's what makes this research so groundbreaking.
Yeah.
It's not just about AI, it's about how AI interacts with us and makes us rethink creativity ownership,
Right.
even privacy in this digital age.
Wait, back up a sec.
Yeah.
Aliases popped up in the paper
Yes.
and caused some data headaches. Right.
Right.
What's that all about?
Think about it. You're trying to count all the pictures of Sandita Newton. Wow.
Easy, right.
Yeah.
But what if some pics use her old stage name, Thandie Newton?
Ah, so the AI's seeing the same person but with different labels.
Exactly.
That could mess up the results big time.
Exactly. And it wasn't just names.
Right.
Some artists use their full name, some a nickname, some just their initials.
Right.
All those variations had to be accounted for.
It sounds like the researchers had to become digital detectives, carefully sorting through all the data. It really shows how AI is only as good as the information it learns from.
That's the key data quality, is everything in AI research. And this alias issue highlights something even bigger transparency in AI if we want to understand how these models make decisions. We need to know what they're learning from.
Makes sense. Otherwise, it's all just a black box.
And black boxes can be dangerous, especially when they're making decisions that impact our lives.
Right. Speaking of, the paper mentioned a bunch of things that can affect an AI's ability to copy.
Right.
Not just the number of images. Like, why does image diversity matter?
Right. Wouldn't more pictures of the same thing be better?
Think about it like learning to paint. Like Van Gogh, would you rather study just one of his paintings or a whole bunch from different periods?
Okay. Yeah.
Seeing more variety gives you a richer understanding of his style, right?
Right, right.
It's the same for an AI. A diverse range of examples helps it get the concept better.
So it's not just about quantity, it's about quality and variety.
Exactly.
Like a well-balanced AI diet.
Exactly. And they talked about how important it is for the images and their captions to match up.
Okay, yeah.
Why would that be a big deal?
Is it like if you see a picture of a cat but the caption says dog,
Yeah.
it messes with your understanding?
That's the idea. AI needs accurate labels to learn effectively, so data labeling is crucial.
Right.
Which means human oversight is still super important.
Makes sense. Do they mention anything else that could affect an AI's copying skills?
They talked about how much the images of a concept vary. If all the training images are very similar, the AI might get too focused on those specific examples and struggle to create new variations.
So it needs to see a range of angles, lighting, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Like if you only ever see pictures of a cat sitting, you might not recognize it when it's jumping or sleeping.
Exactly. It's all about giving the AI a broad and balanced data set to learn from. They also briefly mentioned this thing called fine-tuning.
Okay.
It sounded pretty interesting.
Right.
And potentially even more concerning. What's the deal with that?
Okay. Before we go down that rabbit hole, I think it's time to take a breather and hear from our sponsor.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were just starting to unravel the mystery of fine-tuning and why it could potentially ramp up the AI imitation game.
All right, let's get back into it. Fine-tuning sounds kind of like giving an AI a crash course in a very specific subject. Is that right?
You nailed it. It's like taking an already trained model and giving it a specialized education. Let's say you want an AI to become a whiz at imitating a particular artist's style. Fine-tuning is like sending that AI to art school, where it focuses intensely on that one artist, studying their techniques and nuances in depth.
So instead of a general art education, it's getting a master class in, say, Monet.
Exactly. And why is this potentially concerning? Well, remember those imitation thresholds we talked about?
Right.
The number of images an AI needs to see before it can convincingly copy.
Yeah.
Fine-tuning can potentially slash those numbers, making imitation even easier.
Hold on. So someone could take an existing AI, fine-tune it on, say, just a handful of my selfies, and then use it to create realistic images of me without my consent.
Potentially, yes.
This is starting to feel like a real-life episode of Black Mirror.
That's the worry. Fine-tuning makes it easier to target specific individuals or concepts, and that raises all sorts of red flags about privacy, consent, and the potential for misuse.
Whoa. So it's not just about controlling the giant data sets used for the initial training.
Right.
We also need to think about all the fine-tuning that could happen afterward. With more specialized data, that seems like a near impossible task.
It's a massive challenge for sure, and it's a prime example of the complex ethical and legal issues we're grappling with as AI technology keeps advancing at warp speed.
This study was a deep dive into some pretty technical stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the things that really stuck with me was how they actually brought humans into the process to check the AI's work.
Absolutely. Those human perception studies were crucial.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, imitation is a subjective thing. What looks like a good copy to one person might not convince another. The researchers wanted to ensure that the AI wasn't just spitting out results that made sense mathematically, but that also aligned with how we see things.
It's like they were asking, does this AI-generated artwork pass the human eye test?
Exactly. They wanted to incorporate human feedback, which adds a whole other layer of complexity, but is super important.
How did they do it? Did they put the AI's artwork in a gallery and ask people for their opinions?
No. They showed people a mix of real and AI-generated images and asked them to rate the similarity on a scale of 1 to 5.
Gotcha.
Simple but effective.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So were there any cases where the AI and the humans completely disagreed? Like the AI thought it nailed the copy, but people were like, nah, that's a total fail.
There were definitely some discrepancies.
Really?
Sometimes the AI thought a copy was amazing, but humans found it unconvincing.
Interesting.
And sometimes vice versa.
Why would that happen?
Yeah.
It's not like the AI is deliberately trying to deceive. Right.
Right. It comes down to the fact that human perception is complex. We're influenced by our experiences, our moods, even our cultural biases. AI, on the other hand, is making judgments based purely on the data it's been fed.
So while AI is getting good at mimicking us,
Right.
it still doesn't fully understand us.
Yes.
There's that human element that it just can't quite grasp yet.
That's a great point, and it highlights why it's so crucial to incorporate human perspectives into AI development. If we want AI systems that truly align with our values and understanding, we need to factor in the human element, not just optimize for cold, hard data.
All right, so we've talked about these imitation thresholds and how they're measured.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back to those surprisingly low numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Just 200 to 600 images for an AI to copy a face.
It is pretty incredible.
Are we really that predictable?
It is mind-blowing, right? But remember, these AIs are trained on massive amounts of data
Right.
and are wired to spot patterns and pick out key features. They're like super sleuths of the digital world.
So even the tiny details that make each of us unique, the curve of our lips, the way an artist holds their brush, these AI detectives can figure it all out.
Exactly. They're picking up on clues that we might not even consciously notice.
It's impressive, but also a little freaky. Makes you wonder if there's anything truly unique about us anymore, if machines can capture our essence so easily.
It's a question that's worth pondering, but I think it's important to remember that AI, at least for now, is still just a tool. It's a reflection of the data we feed it.
So if the data is biased or incomplete, the AI is going to inherit those flaws.
Absolutely, and then that's why it's so crucial to pay attention to what we're using to train these models.
Right.
It's not just about quantity. It's about quality, accuracy, and diversity.
The researchers gave some great examples of this in the paper,
Yeah.
highlighting how even small details in the data can have a big impact, like the case of Thin-Eye Newton.
Right. They had to be super careful to include pictures tagged with both her current name and her former stage name.
Right.
If they hadn't, they would have underestimated the number of images associated with her, which could have skewed the whole study.
It's amazing how much meticulous detective work goes into preparing these data sets. Who knew data cleaning could be so crucial?
For real. And it wasn't just names. Think about art styles. Some artists go through phases experimenting with different techniques throughout their careers.
So it's not just about finding images labeled with the artist's name, right?
Right.
It's about understanding the full scope of their work and making sure the AI model gets a well-rounded education in that artist's style.
That's it. It's about context, nuance, and seeing the bigger picture, and that's where human expertise comes in. You need people who understand art history.
Right.
Who can spot those stylistic shifts and make sure the AI isn't getting a skewed view.
It reminds me of that old saying, 2 heads are better than 1. We need that collaboration between human and artificial intelligence to ensure things are on the right track.
Couldn't agree more. It's a partnership, not a replacement.
The researchers were also very upfront about the limitations of their study,
Yeah.
which I appreciated. One thing they pointed out was that they only looked at pre-trained models.
Right.
What's the significance of that?
It's an important distinction. A pre-trained model is like a student who's already finished school and has a broad base of knowledge,
Okay.
but their findings might not necessarily apply to models that have been further trained,
Okay.
or as we discussed earlier, fine-tuned on more specific data sets.
So like those specialized art school classes we talked about.
Exactly.
That extra training could change how easily an AI picks up on certain styles or features.
That's right. Their research focused on those out-of-the-box models, but there's a whole other world of possibilities and potential risks when you start fine-tuning them for specific purposes.
And they also mentioned some limitations with their method for estimating the imitation threshold.
Right.
Mimetics 2, right?
Yes.
Can you give us a quick recap of what that is?
Yeah.
And what some of the challenges are?
Mimetic 2 is a really smart method that basically allows researchers to get a quick read on an AI's copying ability without having to train brand new models, which would take forever and a ton of money.
Okay, so it's like a shortcut to figure out how much an AI needs to see before it becomes a mimic.
Exactly. And it does this by analyzing the link between how often a concept appears in the training data and how well the AI can copy it. Basically, the more the AI sees something, the better it gets at imitating it.
Makes sense, but you said there are some catches with this method.
Right.
What are some of the things Mimetic 2 might miss?
One of the big assumptions Mimetic 2 makes is that the AI only learns a concept if it's directly named in the caption of an image. Okay.
But what if an image contains something that's not explicitly labeled?
Oh, I see. Like a picture might show a bunch of people, but the caption only names one of them. The AI might be learning from all those faces, even if they're not tagged.
Exactly. So it
Yeah.
might be picking up on more than we realize. And another limitation is that Mimetic 2 only gives us a snapshot in time. It tells us how well a model can imitate right now based on the data it was trained on. But AI is constantly evolving. What happens when that model gets fine-tuned on new data?
The whole game changes, right? The imitation threshold could drop even further.
That's right. Mimetic 2 doesn't capture those dynamic changes that happen over time.
Okay.
So it's a valuable tool, but we need to be mindful of its limitations and interpret the results carefully. It's just one piece of the puzzle in understanding AI imitation.
Okay, so we've talked about these imitation thresholds and how they're calculated, but the big question looming over all of this is, what now? How do we deal with this? You're hitting on the core issue here. This research isn't just an academic exercise. It has major implications for how we think about AI, especially when it comes to things like copyright privacy and the very definition of art itself.
We're already seeing lawsuits pop up around the use of copyrighted material and training data sets, and then there's the whole ethical minefield of consent, the potential for misuse.
Absolutely. It's clear that we need some rules of the road for AI development. The problem is the technology is evolving so quickly, it's like trying to hit a moving target.
Where do we even begin with something this complex?
I think a good starting point is to recognize that AI isn't just a neutral tool.
Right.
It's a powerful force that can be used in many ways, some good, some not so good.
Yeah.
We need to be actively involved in shaping how it develops and how it's used.
We can't just stand back and let the tech dictate the terms.
Right.
We have a responsibility to steer it in a direction that benefits everyone. But that's easier said than done, right?
You're right, there's no easy fix. But I think a crucial first step is to bring everyone to the table. AI developers, legal experts, ethicists, artists, to have open and honest conversations about the challenges and opportunities that AI presents.
It's about finding that balance between fostering innovation and protecting our values, our rights, and our creativity.
Exactly. This research on imitation thresholds is shining a light on a very specific challenge, but it also speaks to a much broader issue. How do we ensure that AI is used responsibly and ethically?
Okay, so this research is prompting some deep ethical questions.
Right.
But what about the practical implications for artists themselves? I mean, for a lot of them, this isn't just a theoretical debate. It's a potential threat to their livelihood.
You're absolutely right. This research has been a real wake-up call for the art world. Imagine pouring your heart and soul into your art, honing your style over years, and then suddenly a machine can replicate it with a few clicks.
It's like having your creative identity stolen. And if anyone can generate art in your style, what happens to the value of your work? It's a legitimate fear.
It is, but it's important to remember that AI isn't just a threat to artists. It can also be a powerful tool for them to use.
Okay, so aside from the potential downsides, are there ways artists can actually benefit from AI?
Absolutely. Some artists are using AI to brainstorm new ideas, to experiment with different styles, or to create art that would be physically impossible to make by hand. Others are using AI as a collaborative partner, feeding it prompts, and then working with the output to create something truly unique.
So it's not about replacing human creativity, but about augmenting and expanding it.
Exactly. Think of AI as a new color on your palette, a new instrument in your band, a new tool in your creative arsenal.
I like that it's a reminder that AI can be a source of inspiration and possibility, not just anxiety and fear, but we also can't ignore the very real concerns of artists who feel threatened by AI imitation. What can be done to protect their rights and interests?
This is where the rubber meets the road. We need clear legal frameworks that protect artists' intellectual property, while also allowing for innovation and experimentation in the AI art world. And it's not just about laws, it's about promoting ethical practices within the AI community itself.
It's a complex challenge.
Yeah.
But one that we need to address head-on. The future of art, both human and machine-made, depends on finding that delicate balance.
Well said.
Okay, I think we've laid out the key pieces of the puzzle here.
Yeah.
So for our listener, what are the biggest takeaways from this research?
Okay.
What should we be thinking about as we navigate this brave new world of AI art?
I think one of the most important things to remember is that AI art isn't just a technical thing.
Right.
It's a cultural force, a social phenomenon that's pushing us to rethink what it means to be creative and how we value art.
It's also crucial to be aware of the potential downsides of AI imitation.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to privacy and misinformation. Develop those critical thinking skills.
Right.
Be skeptical of what you see online and don't be afraid to ask questions.
And finally, remember that AI is, at its core, a tool that can be used for good or for bad. It's up to us to decide how we want to shape its development and use We need to be thoughtful, responsible, and proactive in making sure that AI benefits everyone.
Absolutely. This research on imitation thresholds is giving us a glimpse into the complexities of AI art. It's a reminder that we need to approach this technology with a sense of wonder and caution, and that we need to work together to create a future where human and artificial intelligence can coexist and thrive.
Well said.
Okay, that's our deep dive into imitation thresholds in AI art. We've explored the technical side, the ethical dilemmas, and the impact on artists. We even touched on the potential for AI regulation and how we might navigate the legal gray areas.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
It has, and we hope you, our listener, found it just as thought-provoking.
Before we sign off, though, I think there's one more fascinating thread to pull on.
Okay.
The researchers focused on pre-trained models,
Right.
but as we've discussed, fine-tuning opens a whole new can of worms. What happens when AI models are trained not just on massive general data sets, but on highly curated, personalized collections of images?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Uh-huh.
Imagine an AI trained not just on any Van Gogh, but on Van Goghs, specifically chosen to match your taste, your aesthetic preferences. Could we see hyper-personalized AI art tailored to individual desires?
Yes.
It's almost like having your own personal AI artist.
That's the intriguing and potentially unnerving possibility. As AI models become more sophisticated and accessible, we could see a shift from mass imitation to personalized mimicry. It raises a whole new set of questions. Who controls these personalized AI artists? How do we prevent misuse? And what happens to the concept of artistic originality when AI can create bespoke masterpieces on demand?
It's a whole other deep dive for another day. That's a thought-provoking question to leave us hanging with. The idea of hyper-personalized AI art is both exciting and a bit intimidating.
Yeah.
But before we spiral down that rabbit hole,
Okay.
let's bring it back to the research we've been discussing. We've talked a lot about the implications for artists,
That's right.
for everyday users like us.
Right.
But what about the people actually building these AI systems? What does this research mean for them?
It's a huge wake-up call for AI developers. They can't just bury their heads in the code and ignore the ethical and legal implications of what they're creating.
Right.
This research is shining a spotlight on the responsibility they have to think carefully about the data they're using,
Right.
the potential for misuse, and the impact their creations have on the world.
So it's not just about building cool tech. It's about building it responsibly.
Exactly.
They need to be thinking about the consequences, not just the capabilities.
Exactly. This research is pushing the AI community to step up and engage in a deeper conversation about ethics, transparency, and accountability. It's about moving beyond the move fast and break things mentality,
Right.
and embracing a more thoughtful and considered approach to AI development.
Okay, so developers need to be more aware of the ethical implications.
Right.
But what about the legal side of things?
Yeah.
We've touched on copyright issues and the potential for lawsuits. Is it even possible to regulate something as complex and rapidly evolving as AI?
That's the million-dollar question, and there are no easy answers. It's a bit of a Wild West out there right now,
Yeah.
with the law struggling to keep pace with technological advancements. But this research gives us some concrete data points to start working with. Remember those imitation thresholds?
Right.
What if we used those as a basis for regulation?
Hold on. Are you suggesting we set legal limits on how much an AI can learn before it's considered a copycat?
It's a radical idea, but it's worth exploring. What if we said, okay, if an AI needs to see fewer than X number of images to imitate a style,
Right.
then that's crossing the line. We need stricter controls on the data being used. It could be a way to set boundaries and create more objective guidelines for AI development.
It's kind of like setting a speed limit for AI imitation.
Yes.
Right. If you go over the limit, there are consequences.
Right.
But how would you even determine those limits? And who gets to decide?
Those are the big questions. It would require a collaborative effort bringing together AI experts,
Right.
legal minds, ethicists, and artists to hammer out a framework that makes sense. And those limits would need to be constantly reassessed as technology evolves.
It sounds incredibly complex, but I can see the logic in using those imitation thresholds as a starting point for regulation.
Yeah.
It's at least a more concrete and objective measure than relying on vague interpretations of copyright law.
Exactly. And it shifts the focus from policing the output of AI models to regulating the input,
Right.
the data that's fueling these creations.
Makes sense. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Right.
But regulation is just one part of the equation, right? We also need to focus on educating people about how AI works. and the potential risks involved.
Absolutely. We can't just rely on laws and regulations. We need to empower individuals to be savvy consumers of AI-generated content. That means developing critical thinking skills, being aware of the potential for biases and misinformation, and knowing how to spot deepfakes and other forms of AI manipulation.
It's like we're entering a new era of digital literacy where we need to be as discerning about AI-generated content as we are about anything else we encounter online.
Couldn't agree more. It's a lifelong learning process, and this research is a valuable contribution to that journey.
Well said. Okay. I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating and often unsettling world of imitation thresholds in AI art. We've covered a lot of ground today, the science, the ethics, the legal implications, and what it all means for the future of creativity.
It's been an incredible journey exploring the cutting edge of AI and its impact on the art world and beyond.
And a big thank you to you, our listener, for joining us on this exploration. If this conversation has piqued your curiosity, we encourage you to check out the full research paper. We've included a link in the show notes.
And as always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged in the conversation about AI.
Until next time, keep those brain cells firing.